have Roxanne Lim, she, her, and also known as Real or Renaissance Roxy. She is a third-generation Filipina-American from New York City. She is a filmmaker, poet, storyteller, and artist. Roxanne's work is centered on the human experience and strives to empower and uplift marginalized communities, especially through the arts. The talk is titled Vision to Voice.
Hey everyone. So Emily is actually going to help me with my slides for this presentation. Okay.
Do you see the screen?
It's still loading. Okay, got it. Cool. So today I'm going to talk to you about visual poetry as a means of healing and connection, especially during this time of social distancing. I believe that the arts are somewhat underrepresented in the power that they have as a form of healing. So that's just something I wanted to offer today. And we could go to the next slide. So I wanted to start with just a really quick warm up and meditation so that we can all ground ourselves into a good headspace. So if we could all just take a collective deep breath and release it. And you'll see that I put up some like random words. And I'd like for you to just take a minute to either put in the chat or free write on your own what you see when you look at these words. So any imagery that comes up, even if it seems a little strange, you can share it. If there's a different word that just keeps popping up, feel free to put that as well. And I'm just going to give you a minute. I like that answer, Isa. Great, 15 seconds. Nice. Okay. And if at any point any other thoughts come up during the talk, I encourage you to write them down or share them as you feel them. So we're going to move to the next slide. This is where I'm going to just tell you a little bit about myself and my background as an artist, as a poet, as a filmmaker. So I've been in the arts and entertainment industry since about 2014, but probably behind a camera for as long as I can remember. And some of you might even remember me from that year that I was on D3E board for FANHS. And during that time, I made a lot of promo videos, and a mini documentary showcasing students from our local Filipino clubs. So a lot of my experiences, even though they're somewhat unconventional and they don't have a very streamlined path, they do all connect. I majored in broadcast journalism, and so a lot of my work comes from a place of wanting to know and wanting to question and wanting to understand how things connect in the world around us. I'm a really big advocate for mental health awareness, social justice, and identifying the dichotomies in our everyday lives. So my work doesn't just stop at content relevant to the Filipino community. It is influenced by it for sure, but it's rather a mission of empowering Black and Brown folks from marginalized communities to own their narratives. So visual poetry was my way to marry that instinctive curiosity and passion for storytelling. I'm wearing contacts, so my vision is a little blurry. Next slide, please. Cool. So what is visual poetry? And the best way to explain it is to just show you. So the next slide is just some screen caps from a series that I'm working on called Glimpses. It's a series of visual poems that challenge notions of intimacy and human connection. I made this series in collaboration with Melissa Bala, who is also from the Erased Panay third generation. And on the next slide, we are going to just show you a really brief excerpt of the very first Glimpses episode.
We used to visit museums, and we would look at art that no one in the real world even cared about. But to us, in those very moments, that art was our world.
Kel got the sauce.
And it was very real, because that art was so much more than a statue staring into space, frozen in time, caught in a crime. That art was so much more than a colored vase, encased, the glass reflecting our own faces as we observe every minute detail, the etchings of history and the secrets they entailed. That art was so much more than a painting on a wall collecting dust, close enough for you to touch, yet held far enough by invisible forces, far enough that you could never feel the ridges of the acrylic and plaster, the love language of a painter's brush, lest you understand a world way too personal. In that museum where they let you look but don't touch, I held your hand for the first time. Not because there was anything to be afraid of, not because I had to, but because you were art to me in every way. And art to me is, in every way, only understood if you interact with it. Though I could have wished to bottle up your laugh, though I could have taken 1,000 pictures so I could guarantee these moments were worth exponential amounts of words, though I could have done everything in my power to preserve you, whether for a month, a day, just one more hour, I held your hand.
Thanks for sharing that, Emily. Great. So, oops, sorry. I closed my own window. So in visual poetry, my personal definition is what you see here on the slide. It's a pairing of words with a style of moving image. So this can be whatever you prefer. It can be a moving collage, a flow chart, a play, Google Slides presentation. A visual poem is centered in basic principles of truth, meaning do what feels right to you. So when I create visual poetry, I tend to gravitate towards film because that's what I'm attracted to. But film is not the only way that you can portray your poem. When creating a visual poem, you should want to answer the questions, what is spoken versus what is understood? What is being felt without being said? A more academic definition by Professor William Bond states that visual poetry is poetry that is meant to be seen. So think of how exactly you want people to see your poem, and what messages do you have to offer, and how are you preparing them to receive? So on the next slide, we talk about visual poetry as healing and connection. How exactly can we heal and connect through this medium? Visual poetry challenges us in many different ways. If you're a visual learner, you might be called to transform your language to match what you see. If you're an auditory learner, you might be called to transform what you see to match your language. If you learn by moving, you might be called to create language through movement. In that same sense, visual poetry gives us a lens to approach difficult situations in our external world. On the next slide, I have some instructions on how to make a visual poem. And you can return to the images that came up for you in your warm-up when practicing it on your own in your own time. The next few slides are just a couple examples from peers and other people that I look up to. I have a poem by Sarah, shout out Sarah, and then I have a poem by Trinidad Escobar. And then the next slide is vision to voice. So if you feel like sharing anything that you come up with after today, please use the hashtag vision to voice, and I would love to see everything that you come up with. And just as we wrap up this presentation on speaking truth to power and using art as a form of healing, I'm going to take a moment here to ask that we just all pause and reflect on the ways that we are aiding our Black friends and family right now. This is work by, actually, sorry, it's the next slide, Emily. Yes, this is a visual poem by Basquiat. A lot of you might recognize him, you might not. And he is a visual poet. So I just want to really point out how a lot of our art and culture is fundamentally influenced by the Black community. And on the next slide, we have a bunch of call to action and resources that you can screenshot and share in your own time. So healing happens in community, healing happens in solidarity. If you're interested in any of my other projects and anything that relates to how I extend these principles into the rest of my work, definitely reach out to me. And yeah, thank you so much.
Any of you were looking for someone specific or something just to get more connected with FANHS Metro New York chapter, I put our email there. There's also chapters across the country. So if you're coming from somewhere else, you can get connected with your chapter, but we're also going to be in a virtual world for a while, so feel free to get connected with us. We also have Instagram, and then very, very optional, we are inviting, if anyone feels inclined and enjoyed today's program, wanted to donate, there's a link on our website, and it goes directly to us just being able to, when we are back in person, host events in person. Sometimes obviously there's like venues and food and things like that, so that's what donations, thank you, yes, multiple chapters. And I will pass it to Emily, our event creator extraordinaire. I hope you're feeling all the warm feelings of how successful this was for our final word.
So I just want to iterate, and I want to thank everyone for your time. These past 2 hours, just going through 5 great speakers, and again, iterate the thank you to the speakers for preparing your talks, for sharing with us your stories, your research, and your work. Like it's been said, we don't want the conversation to end here. And so I hope you all have a takeaway from this, engage with other organizations or funds, and keep going with the message in this community space. We hope to see you in a different event. There's lots of links and in the chat, and then also we will have a follow-up email to you all. So thank you again for attending and for joining, and I hope you have a great evening.